All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back into the Madhouse. And today I am with an amazing guest. I am with the AgroSong mastermind himself. I got Scott Alshanski. And man, how are you doing? Say hello, introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Scott. I go by Bumi Jr online. Some of you may have interacted with me on like 20 lore or other discords, and I'm doing great. I'm super happy to be on. I know we've been trying to make this work for a while, but that busy holiday dad life makes it a little tough. So I'm really glad we found the time.
Yeah, man, me too. So holiday dad life. You have a newish born, right?
He's 3 now, so
Okay.
he's like a little dude that lives in my house now.
Yeah.
Makes demands from me.
Yeah, man, just the one little one.
Just the one for now.
Yeah.
Maybe more in the future, but just the one for now. Yeah.
Hey, that's a handful, right? So, but man, you're getting used. I no kids myself. The wife and I no kids, just three wiener dogs. But I always
All right.
hear from people, you either have your kids back to back to back, so you never have sleep again, or you take a break so you get a little bit of rest and recovery. So, looks like you're choosing the rest and recovery route.
Yeah, yeah. As much as we can. That's not as much as we'd like, or as much as before kids, but yeah, it's a good life for now.
Yeah, well, perfect, man. Well, I'm glad to hear it. And for all you guys that don't know, this is Boomy. He is I called him the Agro Song Mastermind because he's been playing Agro Song for really as long as I've at least been playing Lorcana. I remember talking about deck lists from the different DLCs, and I'd always come to his, and I'd be like, "What is this? This isn't Steel Song. Like, what is this deck? What is it doing here?" So what kind of led you to go this route of the whole wheel version instead of traditional steel song?
Yeah, so um I've been playing Amber and Steel aggro since set 2. Um they released Cinderella, Ballroom Sensation, and then Let the Storm Rage On and Strength of the Raging Fire, and those three cards together just absolutely incredible. So I have been, iterating on that for several sets. In set 3, I won a set championship with a deck with Cinderella, and the two songs, and I won a set championships in set 4. Um, and then I played one set 4 DLC on Red Blue, and I finished top 32 with that. But I just hated playing it the whole time. Like, it's just
Mm,
so many game actions and so many things to take care of. So I came back to Amber Steel for set 5, and by then there were way too many cards that made my favorite card just completely obsolete, which is Tiana Celebrating Princess. She's the steel 1/4 resist 2 quest for 2, and then if she's exerted and you have no cards in your hand, your opponents can't play actions.
okay.
Um, she's just unplayable now, but the core of the deck really was Cinderella and the song package. Um, but when I was testing for set 5 metagame, and eventually the Las Vegas DLC, I was playing Amber Steel aggro, and I never really liked traditional Steel Song because so many of the cards only quest for one. But I really liked the idea of being able to draw 7 to refill on gas. So I threw in a shift line, and I threw in Prince Naveen, and I threw in a whole new world, and it was just smashing everything.
Mm,
Like, you against red, blue, and red, purple, you just play a bunch of high questers, get a lot of lore. Either play Naveen and sing and play Whole New World in the same turn, or shift Robin Hood and sing a whole new world, and you just regas. They have to answer your board. You play to the board again. Um, they have to answer your board again, and you can just kind of keep doing that. You don't, you after the first A Whole New World, you don't really gas out like you might with like a different type of Amber Steel aggro deck or a different type of aggro deck.
mm. Well, and that's like you mentioned wheel 100%. I think the reason I love steel song in general is all because of wheel. Like the ability to it's as much as an offensive as it is a defensive at the same time. Just being able to refill your hand, and then, oh, look, a purple player or a Flowersham that's drawn 9 cards. Well, goodbye.
Right.
Like,
Right. Yeah. Opponents will be going hard on, maybe the rabbit bounce, maybe questing with Hiram for the second time. They're up a bunch of cards. You play a whole new world, you negate all of that card advantage. You're both back at 7. Maybe they discard several key cards they've been holding on to for a while. Like it's a disruptive tool, it's an aggressive tool, it's a card advantage mitigation tool. It just does so many things, and so few people are playing it right now. And I think it should be in the meta more than it is, but I know a lot of people have moved towards the Diggy Hole
mm,
Doc Mine deck, which I think that deck is pretty good too.
yeah. No, and it really, like, it's shown that it is very good at what it does. And but we were talking about it a little before, and this is something that in the 20 lore aggro song thread that I think we've both mentioned quite a few times, in that they're played very differently. When you play that diggy diggy hole, you're looking to just lay things down and refill with dock, and just it just plays differently. Whereas this, you're still looking at playing things down, but instead of with the diggy diggy hole, you're looking at turn 5 or 6. Like this, you're still prepping for turn 7, 8, 9, because you can last that long. Whereas if you're going that long with diggy diggy hole, there's a good chance that the game's already over at that point. um, but
Right.
I agree. I think I prefer the wheel. For the longest time, I never touched your list because I was like, it scared me almost,
Okay.
which is interesting. And I know we were chatting quite a bit, getting going into this DLC because you didn't get a lot of time to practice. So, and we
Right.
we were messing with a lot of stuff, and I was like, hey, I've been playing with your list a little bit from Seattle, Vegas or Seattle. You were at both, right?
Yeah.
Seattle.
I was, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I played there. I think they're about 6 cards different from
Yeah.
Vegas to Seattle.
Okay. Yeah.
So,
So,
but same core concept.
mm-hmm. And so I picked it up, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna start trying to play it. And there were so many things that I was like, okay, I know why I never picked this up right off the bat, because it's just coming from traditional steel song. It was very different, but I'll admit, playing your list and practicing with it, it's made me better with traditional steel song as well. Just knowing that we're an aggro deck, especially yours. But
Right. Yeah.
so going into um or I guess, what are the things? So no, or so traditional steel song, you normally see the Ursulas and you normally see the Zeuses. And when you went
hmm
to Vegas, you
hmm
ended up playing quite a few red blue, right? That you ended up 2-0ing.
Uh, I played. I played against Red Blue twice
Mm-hmm.
in Las Vegas, and yeah, I 2-0'd both of them. Um, and Red Blue for Vegas was a little different. A lot of people were off Ice Block and Baby
Mm-hmm.
Sisu for whatever reason, and I mean, looking at, if you're looking at my list here, the same kind of core concepts, which is 3 strength characters that quest for 2, and when you have a lot of those, half of their board wipes don't do anything,
Mm-hmm.
and then they're reliant on Be Prepared, and you can play Pete to disrupt Be Prepared. Like if you play Pete and you have, Smee, Sven, Robin Hood out, like you're going to get another 6 lore next turn unless they commit like a Maui or a Medusa to the board, and that's really really fine.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and in Seattle, it was a little bit of a different story because people were back on the ice blocks and baby Sisu. So ice block really really does a lot of work in disrupting the 3 strength character plan. Um, so against Red Blue in that tournament, I actually went 1 game win and 3 game losses. So it was a completely different story when they changed back to the ice blocks.
Yeah. So going into this one, red blue, and when I say this one, I mean NA Continentals. Red blue was entertaining the idea. I saw a lot of people talking about, hey, we need to cut ice blocks, we need to cut Medusas. It's too many uninkables. It's killing us. And a lot of them ended up
Hmm.
cutting Medusas, but we saw a lot of them stick with the ice blocks. But I think losing
Yeah.
Medusa was a big win for us. But going into NA Continentals, we were looking at your list. You had experimented with a lot of different things. You had experimented with throwing in Ursulas and Zeuses, and you had thrown in
Hmm.
Ariels. But to save everyone from freaking out, it was two Ariels, two Ursulas, and two Zeuses, from what I remember. So what was the thinking
Yeah.
there?
So the thinking there was Maui Shark is a format defining card,
Mm-hmm.
and you need to answer Maui Shark. Um, and I actually, when I went to bed Friday night, I had in sleeves two Ariels, two Ursula Vanessa, and two Along Came Zeus, along with two World's Greatest Criminal Mind. And when I was looking at it in the morning, I'm like all of these cards in my deck get banished by Big Sisu,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't want to play that game. So I swapped out about 13 cards, 13 to 15 cards, I don't remember exactly. And I just went with an updated Vegas list, which was, the 12 songs, the 8 removal spells and the For a Whole New World, no Ariel, a few Prince Naveen, the full play set of Svens, a full Robin Hood shift package, and it just looked a lot more comfortable to me, especially after like the LCQs were dominated by red blue.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Now, so the LCQs, did you spend a lot of time kind of just watching and walking around, or was it you saw the stats at the end when they said, "Hey, 32% are red blue here"?
I just saw the stats at the end. I spent a lot of my Friday in the Turbo Zone, doing Pack Rush with friends, getting the Cusco and Baymax promos, talking to some other friends who are qualified about what they're playing. Um, I thought very briefly, well, I guess not very briefly, but I thought for a moment about, audibling to red purple. And then I played 7 games against Kurt Spice, and he was on his Diggy Hole deck that he qualified for Worlds with,
Mm-hmm.
and he beat me 7-0. Um, and that was a really valuable lesson I learned on
Mm-hmm.
Friday was don't be an idiot. Play a deck that just don't scare yourself off of playing what you know because like you're freaking out.
Mm-hmm.
So that for me sealed it. I wanted to be locked in a lot sooner, but that for me sealed it that I was going to be playing amber cards and steel cards.
Yeah. No, and that's yeah, God, and I think that's something like so many people struggle with. Even people that have been playing TCGs for a long time, it's you know, you they don't know what they're gonna run. Yeah, even the day before a set champs, and then the morning of set champs, they're still messing with like three different decks, and instead of preparing for
Hmm.
lines, and then they get there and they're like, you know what, this deck is going to beat the meta. It's not what I normally play, but it's going to beat the meta. And then they play their first game and realize, crap, I don't know the lines well enough. And so
Right.
I think just this is something, we both, know JDR pretty well. It's in
Hmm.
his Discord, people will ask these questions all the time, and he'll be like, how about you just play what you're comfortable with? Like, stop worrying about the rest of this stuff. So
Right. Yeah.
yeah, there's a lot of value there, and
Yeah.
I definitely it definitely makes a lot of sense. Um,
Yeah. And adding to that, like if you I feel like when you start playing a deck for the first time, unless you are like sitting with somebody over your shoulder who is proficient with the deck, like for the first ten games that you play, like every deck is going to feel like garbage
mm-hmm,
because you don't know what to mulligan, you don't know what to ink, you don't know, what the board state's going to look like in 5 turns. Like you are missing all of this context and information that it takes to like play a Lorcana deck proficiently.
Mm-hmm.
That you really have to get in. You really have to get in reps, enough to be comfortable and enough to at least understand like what your mulligans should look like and what your early ink decisions should look like.
Oh, definitely. And like I think plenty of people have said it. Like the strongest thing in Lorcana is that mulligan. And when you don't know, what your turn 5 and 6 should look like, how do you know how to utilize the strongest part of the game? And I think that's just play what you're comfortable with ultimately. So
Absolutely.
well, speaking of what you're comfortable with, you still chose wheel because that's what you've done really well with. You've shown that you are the wheel aggro player. But we did see you played Kurt Spice the night before on his. He was playing his Diggy Diggy Hole variant with Chin Pose and Rapunzel's
Hmm.
Towers. You knew that Diggy Diggy Hole is going to show up a lot. What kept you from just going down that rabbit hole and saying, you know what, it's doing well. It answers Baby Sisu really well. Why don't I just play this deck?
I don't like Doc as a card.
Mm-hmm.
I understand the power. I see him do very strong things, very explosive opens. Gases back up just enough, like perfectly, and Steel Song and No Mermaid aggro, um, perfectly spaced wheels are just a thing of beauty. Like
Mm-hmm.
you get to wheel chain people over and over. It's really frustrating for them. Doc, when he's perfectly spaced, is the same way. But when Doc first came out, I was testing him pretty extensively, and I kept drawing two together, and I just decided like I hate this card. It's like the first one is a 1/3 with no text, and then the second one, draws a card. Or if you want to discard the first one, then you've just got basically like a bad Maleficent sorceress. Um, so he just never really clicked with me. And then Brendan DeCandio popularized the Diggy Hole version, and everybody really saw then what a powerful card Doc was. And a lot of my friends and a lot of my testing group, they're like, you should play Doc. Doc is great. I'm having all this success with Doc, and I'm just an old curmudgeon. I'm like, I don't like this card. I don't like Doc. Um, so I stuck with a whole new world. I don't think a whole new world is too bad right now, especially with Fishbone Quill removing itself from
Mm-hmm.
the meta. Um, I like being able to play a little bit of a longer game. I like being able to dig 7 cards if I'm looking for a song answer to something, or digging for a Pete to delay the be prepared. Um, so and like you said earlier, like I've had success on the whole new world version. I finished top 32 in Las Vegas. I finished top 64 in Seattle. I didn't have a whole lot of time to test set six since it came out, and it's just what I was most comfortable on.
Yeah, it's looking at the list, we do have some set 6 cards in there. We have the Zombie Lilo, Calhoun, and John
Yeah.
Silver. Um I remember the first time, one of the earlier times I was testing your list and I messaged you and I was like, "Hey man, I just tested Calhoun and holy crap, we don't have Ursula, but Calhoun uh did you have the same feeling? How was the testing for you?"
I was a little low on Calhoun at first. Because Cinderella plus a single song kind of solos the matchups where
Mhm.
Calhoun is exceptionally good. Um, but she's just this like really, really resilient and like really, really resilient and strong utility character, especially turn 2 on the draw,
Mhm.
which is kind of where the aggro build is lacking because I'm sure you've experienced this, but playing like a Lilo or a Piglet on turn two on the draw just feels terrible.
Mm,
And I found myself always wanting Smee on the draw on turn two,
mm,
over the other two drops. And um, Calhoun is like Smee's, 5 and 6 in this list. And if she were inkable, or if like the other uninkable slots weren't so non-negotiable, I'd probably be playing more.
mm.
Um, but two felt good. You hit a Calhoun on the draw against another Cinderella deck. She's going to be really good there. Uh, she provides a lot of utilities. She can give you a little burst of lore when you're, maybe clearing a Maui on the swing back. So I really warmed up to her over time. Um, but I think I'd still keep playing two,
Mm.
moving forward with the list, because I really do like prioritizing those higher lore,
Yeah.
two drops, just to get the ball rolling as soon as possible.
Oh, for sure. And that's, Calhoun, again, when we're Amber Steel, generally we have really good matchups into pretty much everything in the meta except for that one red blue. And Calhoun, unfortunately, that's a card like Ursula that we just don't want to see off the top. So,
Right. Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
I,
And
go ahead.
yeah, and I was gonna say that's kind of the biggest reason why I didn't play Ursula, is because she's just a one quester. Yeah, she threatens Along Came Zeus. She can sing your songs a turn early if you didn't have the Cinderella. She's a very powerful card, but against our weakest matchup, she's one of the weakest cards.
Mm. Yeah, oh yeah, and I would argue that the card you play her for, which is Zeus, is also one of the weakest cards going into that matchup, and it. So I think Calhoun did a good job filling that role. But looking at set six cards, one of my favorite things to do before set six with this list was to play Smee on two, quest with Smee on turn three, and then play a Piglet. And then my Smee doesn't take that damage, which changes
Yep,
everything. Like opponents,
everything.
oh yeah, like red purple, they keep their Chernobog around, hoping to, banish your Smee. But now
Yeah.
we have John Silver. So let's talk about that one. What'd you throw him in for?
So John Silver does a couple things. First is his text box. An opposing character can't challenge during their next turn. Um, that maybe keeps a Piglet safe, keeps maybe a Naveen safe, something, keeps something safe. Um, the other thing that he does that I think is, a little sneaky, but like you mentioned, he's a captain. He prevents me from taking damage at the end of your turn. And last set, last set that didn't matter as much because most things that are going to challenge into him have three
Mm-hmm.
health or less anyway, and they're just going to get banished in the challenge. Well, now there is a very prevalent 2/4 that exists. And I don't know if you've ever had the displeasure of turning a captainless Smee sideways into a genie,
Mm-hmm.
but it sets them up to blow you out with Bell.
Mm-hmm.
They clear. He puts the full amount of damage on Genie. They clear the Smee for free. They play Bell. They move 3 damage to your other thing, and now you have lost the game.
Yep.
Um, so now, before this Seattle and Vegas list only had 4 captains, which was 4 piglets. Now I have 6. So I think I played Smee on turn two. Maybe half of the games I played
Mm-hmm.
on at Continentals, and I think at the end of my turn I put damage on him twice total.
Yeah.
And a Smee with a captain is just one of the best cards in the game. He's just so good. And like you
Mm-hmm.
mentioned, like the Chernobog's followers can't get him. Um, any like goon can't get him if you're playing against a deck that's playing a shift line. Um, he just sits there, being a 3/3 that quests for two, and he's a menace that way.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, and
And
it's.
then
Go ahead.
yeah, and sorry, another thing, like with Chernobog's followers, sometimes people will like quest with their Chernobog's followers and just leave them there because they
Mm-hmm.
don't think you want to trade your SME into, into their one drop of their Chernobog's followers. But then you challenge their, the Chernobog's followers, and then you play, a John Silver or a Piglet. Well, now your SME doesn't get banished at the end of the turn. They miss out on their, on their redraw, and you have 2 damage on your SME to heal with Rapunzel the following turn.
Mm-hmm.
So it's things like that. So now they have to like trade another thing into SME or risk you drawing 2 cards. So him with extra captains is just outstanding, and that's like the main thing John Silver does. And then like the secondary thing is his box of text, which is just like okay, whatever, But John Silver is a 3 cost captain. He can sing your songs. He trades with a lot of things like fox, goat, rabbit. All of the good stuff that a 3 strength character trades with. Um, and then sometimes he protects your other characters from a challenge.
Yeah, he's a jack of like what he does, and it really for me it really is the captain is what does it for me. Just like you said, I think he is the strongest 2 drop in the game, and I don't really feel like anyone could argue that. And then you have more captains to add to the list, and it just makes him just so much
Yeah.
better. The number of times that I've played someone and they're just biding their time waiting for Smee to take the damage, and then he doesn't, and they're just like, well,
Right.
what do I do now? Like, so
Right. Or if you're like questing your SME away, you let him tick up to 2 damage. I think, okay, I don't have to deal with this SME
mhm,
because he's gonna clear himself next turn. I'll prioritize something else. And then you play a captain, and suddenly he's around for another turn, and that throws a wrench into their plans. Yeah, just an outstanding card, and just a really good, you know, a good reason to include good captains in your deck. Like obviously you're not
mhm.
going to put bad cards for the captain tag. John Silver does just enough to warrant like playing him. But I think if he were not a captain, you'd probably play something else over
Yeah.
him.
And I do agree with that. And it just between Calhoun and John Silver and Pete, like we just have so much. I think we were already a good on the draw deck, but then you add in Pete, which was made us a great on the draw deck, especially into traditional steel song. And then now you have John Silver, which is protecting you against all the other stuff, depending on what you're up
Right,
against. So yeah.
right, yeah,
The last
yeah, and
sets. Go ahead. No, what do you got?
I was gonna say no. I agree with that. I think Amber and Steel together have some of the best on the draw cards in the game. If your opponent doesn't play Cinderella on one, your own Cinderella is the best 1 drop on the draw in the game. Calhoun and Smee are 2 of the best 2 drops on the draw in the game. Pete is an absolutely incredible card on the draw. Prince Naveen is an absolutely incredible card on the draw. He is so good at stealing tempo back. Like if you play a game where you curve, against maybe Steel Song on the draw. They play Ariel on turn 3. You play Pete on your turn 3. They do nothing on their turn 4 because they played out their hand wanting to whole new world. You play Naveen and pair it with Strength of a Raging Fire and clear their Ariel, and now they're like completely locked out of the game.
Hmm.
Which I have done in DLCs before. To win matches 2-0 against other Steel Song decks.
It's I was actually just getting there, and you kind of answered it, because I think we had talked a little bit about Gaston, but we ended up cutting him, and I think Gaston was in there for the John Silvers originally, maybe. But
Yeah,
how are you feeling about
yeah. I
him?
played. I played 2 copies of Gaston in Seattle, because I had to cut a Naveen and I had to cut another card to make room for Baloo, because
Mm,
Baloo felt really really important
mm,
in Seattle. But I still needed cards to sing a whole new world, which is why I included Gaston, and I included Gaston over Ariel because I was still only on 12 songs. Um, and Gaston can't be brawled. So, just running Gaston out there on 3 against a red deck, like you're gonna get to, start your next turn with him.
mm,
Um, you play out your whole hand, you sing a whole new world. Like you have a board of 4 or 5 characters on your turn 4, and and then you get to regas and draw 7. But with this with this current set, um, there are just other cards I wanted for those slots, so I didn't include any Singer fives in the 3 drop slots, because I wanted John Silver, and in my opinion, 4 Pete and 4 Lawrence are mandatory.
Mm. No, it's I feel like the last two sets, one of the first things I see Steel Song players do is this big let's cut Lawrence guys or cut him down to one or and then by the end of it
Yeah,
everybody's always back on four. Like he's such a menace. But
yeah, yeah. And that's funny you say that, because I've been saying, Lawrence is a menace, and I've been saying that for 5 sets now, because he's a menace. I played him in set 2, I played him in set 3, I played him in set 4, I played him in set 5, I played him in set 6, and he just does so much
mm,
for for his cost. He's 4 strength. He dodges Medusa, he dodges Sisu, he dodges all the red stuff. He dodges um he dodges like Tink plus swords. Like there, when that combo was still, in the meta. They play Tink plus swords to clear your whole board,
mm.
but now you have a Lawrence with 3 damage on it, and Rapunzel likes when your Lawrence has 3 damage on
Yeah.
it. So he's just an outstanding card, and yeah, people are quick to cut him, and everybody always comes back to Lawrence. He's just so good.
Oh yeah, and like it's one of those. If I have a Smee or a Lawrence in my hand, like I am generally keeping Rapunzel because I know that I'm gonna have a really good chance at refilling that route, and then meanwhile I have two characters, 3 characters questing for two that are really
Hmm.
difficult. So, but looking at your list, we didn't talk about the zombie Lilos, and you ended up running only two. Why? Any specific reason? Why not more?
Um, Lilo is really, 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 really good when they have to use Be Prepared.
Mm,
And she is really, 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 really bad every other time.
mm,
Um, be, because, you know, bringing back a 1/2 that they can just challenge with their Sisu that wiped your board isn't good. Feeding things up to their Calhoun isn't good. Feeding things up to their Maui Shark isn't good. Feeding things up, for them to just challenge in, get a free damage on their character, and use Rapunzel to draw an extra card. That's not very good. So she was just kind of there for the red decks, for when you can force a Be Prepared, and bring back, bring back, excuse me, when you can bring back pressure, without committing cards from your hand. Um, that didn't come up at all in Continentals. I only played against one red blue and one red purple. I think I brought her back 1 time total the whole tournament. I did keep her in an opening hand against my round 7 Blurple opponent as free ink.
mm,
So this card is great ink here. No need to mulligan it away.
mm.
Um, and that's about the extent of what Lilo did for me on the weekend. Had I played against more red blue and more red purple, she might have been more relevant. But if I'm playing a 2 drop that just wants to quest, it's going to be Piglet, Smee, then Lilo, kind of in that order.
Mm. No, and I found the same thing. I started off the set running 4 of them, I believe, and when people
Hmm.
didn't expect her, she was a lot more powerful. But now as they've
Yeah,
like red blue especially has gone away from 4B preps and instead gone 4
yeah.
Sisu, she's become not useless, but you use her once.
A lot less effective. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. People really learned. The good red blue players really learned, like, okay, I need to control the board with my characters. I need to prioritize Sisu. I need to prioritize playing 5 cost Maui. um, and force, enforce action, enforce board control that way, rather than trying to hyper ramp to the be prepared, because if that was their plan, they just get eaten alive by these Lilos.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but that's not what the red blue decks are doing anymore. So she is just kind of there as an insurance policy. Never really came up. I think I'd not. I don't think I'd give her slots away to anything, because I think when she is good, there isn't a card that's better.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just the times when she is really good don't come up enough to warrant 4 spots.
Yeah. No, and I agree. And that's so my aggro doc list, it runs four of them, but it really comes down to there's just nothing else in that list to run because it's not running a shift line. So it's just
Mhm.
like I mean
Right.
it's the best of what's left. But I agree. I think going too many, you just end up with an inkable card that doesn't feel good off the top deck and things like that.
Right.
But I
Yeah.
wanted to talk. So, two matchups that people always struggle with the most when it comes to Amber Steel are red purple and red blue, and I've people, well, what do I do against these matchups? And well, red blue, you hope you don't match into them like that. That's kind of about it. But red purple,
Yeah.
going into that one, we know in both these matchups we got to go fast. We know that they don't have any hand disruption. There's no two drop Ursulas. There's no discard.
Mhm.
What kind of are you looking for? Do you ever keep the Naveen Whole New World, or what is your dream hand, or what are the things you're looking for most going into red? Let's start with red purple.
So against red purple, I want Cinderella on one every game.
Mm-hmm.
Um, surprise, surprise, surprise. I want Cinderella on one in 90% of my games, 95% of my games. Um, then in both matchups, well, I guess against red purple, I want Smee on turn two. And then on turn three, I want like Lawrence or Piglet, or um, maybe another Smee and a one drop, like a 1/2/2/1 kind of hand.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I will almost always keep one copy of A Whole New World unless my hand has like no one drop, no two drop against red purple. Um, I'll keep a Robin Hood shift line and A Whole New World if I have it. And then maybe throw the rest back for like a two drop and safe ink. A Whole New World is a lot more effective against red purple, um, because they use the bounce cards. You can kind of keep them off balance with Cinderella early. Um, so a lot of times I'll try to play for a pretty quick A Whole New World against them, and just go extremely wide,
Mm-hmm.
while doing that, and then slam Pete into them getting to 7 ink,
Yep.
because a lot of them don't play big Sisu. Their big Sisu is a lot less effective than Red Blue's big Sisu against us, because they don't have Ice Block. They don't have a way to shrink our 3 strength characters. Um, in in the two DLCs and then in Continentals, all of the red purples I've played against felt really favorable for me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I've won a bunch of I did 2-0 the one red purple I played at Continentals. I 2-0'd red purple a few times in both DLCs. Um, the deck is just extremely strong.
Yep.
Especially the wheel version is extremely strong against red purple, and I think a really big part of that is because a whole new world, like hand dump A Whole New World, hand dump Pete into your B prep. They just can't get enough on the board. They can't ramp to like a Crab Fox turn like Blurple can. Um, they can't like ice block Brawl and Naveen. They can't. There's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of things that other purple decks and other red decks can do to interact that red purple together just can't
Mm-hmm.
interact with in a very favorable way. Um, so like Sven is very good against that against red purple. You know, they typically have a couple characters on board. You know, you quest with a piglet. You know, you ready it with Sven. They can't. You know, your piglet's going to go for another three. Um, you know, you use Cinderella to Raging Fire their Sisu. You know, now they don't have a three drop. You know, the really easy games are the ones where you start like Cinderella, Storm your first thing, Raging Fire your second thing. They can't play, you know, Crab or Fox on turn three, and from there they're just so far behind.
Yeah.
Um, but against Red Blue, um, against Red Blue, I want Daisy on one. I want Piglet on two. I want Pete on three. And I say Pete on three, and I think a lot of people will take like a two and a one or like a Lawrence over Pete
Mm.
on three, and I think that's a mistake because one of Red Blue's best openers on the draw, one of Red Blue's best openers on the draw when they're against you is Sail into Sail Brawl on your Piglet, and if you go like Daisy, Piglet, Pete, um, the best thing they can play is Tala, but
Mm-hmm.
she's still really good there. But now you have a Pete to sing Strength of a Raging Fire the next turn, and they cannot brawl your Piglet that turn, and they can't like Sail Sisu your Daisy that turn. Um, so that's the ideal opener against Red Blue. Uh, and then, you know, I typically would want to follow that up with either two drops on four or Naveen plus Wheel on four, and just keep the gas coming. Really, against Red Blue, what you're trying to do is apply consistent pressure to put them in awkward situations.
Mm-hmm.
Um, where you know maybe they have to be prep, maybe they have to take a low value Sisu, you know maybe they have to play kind of an awkward Maui that you know to like clear a Lawrence or a Smee, and then you can get value out of your Let the Storm Rage on the next turn. You know, but I'm not saying by any means that the matchup is easy, because it's still definitely the hardest one.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but you can, you know, if you draw the cards in the right order, if they draw the cards, you know, not necessarily in the right order, you know, you can still kind of win. But it definitely feels like 50-50 on the play and like 30, you know, 30-70 on the draw.
Mm-hmm.
But you can, you know, you can win games both on the play and on the draw against them. You know, sequencing is very important. Um, you know, disrupting them. If you can get rid of some key cards with a whole new world, that really helps. You know, you might whole new world them and they discard three Sisus, and suddenly the game's a lot easier
Mm.
because they just don't have access to as many Sisus. You know, and you know you can kind of count on your Pete's to prevent the board wipes.
Yeah.
Um, but you know, I decided to not include cards like World's Greatest Criminal Mind in Along Came Zeus because yes, they're good at like clearing Shark, but if you draw them when they don't have Shark, they're just not going to do anything.
Yeah.
So I decided I'd just rather try to you know go full throttle and get them that way. And you know I got 2-0'd by the one red blue player I played against. Um, and you know I think what happened in that I think I was going to lose the on the draw game no matter what. You know their cards lined up well enough, and you know I don't think I was going to win that game anyway. But my on the play game, um, I think I committed to a bad line pretty early, and didn't adjust based on the cards that I had drawn. So I gave up. You know I gave up a lot of value in shifting a Robin Hood, and then he just played Ice Block and Brawl on it the next turn. You know that was a rough 2 for 1, and then from there I just didn't have enough. Yeah, I just didn't have enough gas because I was basically you know one or two characters behind where I should have been had I
Mm-hmm.
taken a different line. Um, so you know, unfortunate to have those kind of learning experiences when you know when there's a lot on the line, but um, you know, but I think I really cleaned it up after that and
Yeah.
really took the time to consider you know consider my lines after that. So
Yeah. So you because you place well, real quick segue. You ended up placing 21st, right? At NA Continentals. I
Yep,
yeah.
I finished 21st. We played 14 games. I won 9 of mine. I lost 5.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, I needed to win 10. I needed to win 10 to make it to play on Sunday.
Mhm.
Um, so, maybe if I play that on the play game against Red Blue a little better,
Mhm.
maybe I get to play on Sunday, but uh, that's not how it went for me, and I really don't have anyone to blame but myself for that. So
Hey man, like still 21st. Like I mean, first off, you were there. Like I know all these
yeah,
like all of these thousands of people that went to DLCs, multiple DLCs. So I mean, and then you were there, and then 21st. Like it's wild, man. And let's be honest, you were.
yeah,
Go ahead.
yeah. No, so I was actually dooming really, really hard like the week before Continentals. I was telling my friends, I was like, man, I'm just going to collect my invited to the ball promo and go home. I'm gonna go 0-7-0. I'm not gonna win a game. Like I don't have the practice. I don't, I had, no confidence going in. I was thinking about playing a deck that I had never played. For the biggest card game tournament I've ever been a part of in my life. And I sat down, I played my games. I felt for the most part I played pretty tight. I played pretty well. Super super happy with how I finished. Um, not a lot of people can say that they finished, in the top, top 21 of, the first North American Continental Championships. So really, really through the moon with how I ended up doing.
Nice, man. And yeah, I think you should be. Yeah, sure, it wasn't day two and it wasn't Worlds, but like still 21st. Like, that's crazy awesome. And you got to go to Disneyland, so that's just the cherry on
Yeah,
top of the cake. So, um,
yeah, I got to go to Disneyland with the family, which was really nice.
yeah, was it the little one's first trip?
Um, it was his first trip to Disneyland. It was
Mm-hmm.
my first trip to Disneyland actually.
Mm.
But we went to Disney World with my in-laws back in November. So we were joking like, oh, he's gonna think it's normal to just go to Disney every couple of months. Uh, which if I had qualified for Worlds, might have actually been the case for us. But for now, we're probably Disneyed out for at least a year or so.
Okay. Well, real quick before I get back to a couple questions. So you've been to Disneyland
Yep.
now. You've been to Disney World. What's the better one?
So they both kind of have their pros and their cons. I've been to Disney World several times throughout my life. There's four big parks. There's tons to do. Animal Kingdom is such an awesome place. Epcot is such an awesome place. Um, the Disneyland park is very similar to Disney World's Magic Kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the Disneyland park has the Star Wars area. That's in a different park in Disney World. Um, but the Disney California Adventure Park um, in Disneyland was fantastic.
Yeah.
There's the Cars Land there, which is
Mm-hmm.
basically, it's like a recreation of Radiator Springs
Mm-hmm.
from the Cars movies, and it's fantastic. You walk in, there's like the bluffs and the cliffs, and then you walk a little bit, you see Flo's Cafe, you see Ramon's shop, you see Luigi's tire shop. There's the Cozy Cone Cafe that has like 6 little counter service um, areas that sell little snacks. Um, and my son absolutely loves cars, so
Mm-hmm.
he was so thrilled being there. You get to ride on a car, you get to like ride on one of the tractor cows
Mm-hmm.
being pulled by or something like a little cart being pulled by those is one of the rides. So he really enjoyed that, and that whole park was really cool. Um, they have like a San Francisco area from Big Hero 6, which
Mm-hmm.
is just a bunch of restaurants. So that was great. But um, I also really like how compact Disneyland is,
Mm-hmm.
because there's the downtown Disney area and then both of the parks are connected to that.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like at Disney World, Disney owns like all of Orlando, Florida, and so Animal Kingdom's way over here, Magic Kingdom's way over here, and Epcot's way over here, and Downtown Disney's way over there, and it's like you can do one thing in a day, if you're at Disney World, because it's like 20-30 minutes to get to any of the other things.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I think I like Disney World better, but I think that's part of the childhood nostalgia.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I was very impressed with Disneyland
Yeah.
as well.
Well, good. I'm glad you're impressed. I too am I prefer Disney World. My wife and I we're massive Disney nerds. Like I said, I've never played TCGs
Hmm.
before, but when I found out about Lorcana,
Yeah.
it was a no brainer.
Oh
So
yeah, absolutely.
I've been to Disneyland one time before. My Molly and I we do the Disney races. If you didn't know, they do
Okay.
like a whole bunch of race challenges, and so we went
Okay. Is
last
that like
year.
the 10Ks or like the running?
Yep, yep. So we do the challenges. It's
Okay.
like a 5K into a 10K into a half marathon into a
Yeah.
marathon, and we really like them. It
Yeah.
gives us an excuse to go to Disney, and like you kind of summed it
Yeah.
up really well. Like Disneyland, it's nice to be able to just go back and forth all willy nilly. Like
Hmm.
everything's there. So Disney World though really is the most magical place on earth. Like
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, and my friend Melissa does the Disney races as well,
Mm,
and she's a Lorcana player too, and she was telling me she had signed up for like a 10K at Disney World,
mm,
um, the weekend of the 10th, which happened to be Continental's weekend.
mm-hmm.
So she had to make the decision to actually fly out to Disneyland and play in the LCQs, rather than do the 10K. So I
Mm-hmm.
hope I hope she feels like she made the right choice, because I was really glad to get to see her out there.
Yeah. Well, good. I'm glad you got to. Hey, that's one of the like that is such a cool part of Lorcana and TCGs. I don't know if it's the same for all TCGs, but it is like I'll be honest. I went to DLC Vegas. It's the first time I've ever been to like a big thing. The longest time I've ever played Lorcana was a set champs that was a
Okay.
32 man. So um,
Okay.
like 7 hours ish, something like that. So
Yeah.
so that was the most I'd ever played in one sitting, and I remember thinking
Hmm.
that is way too much. And then I went to DLC Vegas, and I was like, oh
Uh-huh.
my gosh, like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah. It can be a slog.
mm,
And so um, when I played in Chicago, I had done well enough in the first 6 rounds that I could just intentionally split and
mm,
make it in. And then same thing in Vegas, I played 6 rounds. I could intentionally split all the way through. In Seattle, I was kind of behind the eight ball after round 4 or 5, and I couldn't lose a game for the rest of
mm.
the day. And that was the first time I had played actually 9 rounds of Lorcana, and I was just so dead by the end of it.
Oh yeah, I man, and then you had day two, and I remember. So I played all 9 rounds because I wanted to see what I could do, and I didn't get to let it go.
Hmm.
I placed like I think it was like 500th somewhere around there, and
Okay.
which I was really happy with. But I remember
Oh yeah.
Sunday, I woke up to do the uh, early side event.
Competitive event.
Yeah, I was
Hmm.
hoping everybody would be drunk and hungover, and I just
Uh-huh.
remember I sat down and I pulled my deck out of the box, and I looked at it and I was like, I'm ready to go home. like I was like, oh my goodness, it's just so much. And I
Yeah.
just like that was because I had also done a side event on Friday, so I had just
Right.
so much Lorcana, but it was going back to why I even brought this up, like you mentioned your friend playing Lorcana, Melissa, and it's like the people that I ran into that I had recognized that I chatted with when I was streaming or that recognized me, like it was so cool, like to run into those people that, and then other people that I met that I still talk to today, and we talk about you know just everything, not just Lorcana, and it's so interesting to me.
Right.
So, but
Yeah. Yeah, and that I think um that I think is one of the really great things about Lorcana is the community is just outstanding.
mm,
I've made so many friends. I've met so many awesome people. Through Discord. I have a couple friends who I text with regularly. We talk about dad stuff. We send each other pictures of our kids doing silly things. Um, we had a group. We had a group um, for dinner Friday night in Anaheim that was like 26 of us going to a
mm,
restaurant. We didn't book a party of 26. They wanted a $1,200 deposit for that, but we got three tables of eight,
mm,
plus another table. So just a really big, really awesome community filled with great
yeah.
people.
Oh yeah, like when I went to Vegas, because I'm a pretty miserly guy. The wife and I like to go to Disney a lot, so that's where we put all our money towards. I
Hmm.
made a post on the Disney Lorcana Facebook page of like, hey, does anyone have a couch I can sleep on? And sure enough, a local there, super awesome guy, does photography for the Raiders. Actually, let me stay at his place, and
Okay.
he was already going to the side events, so he's like, hey, I'll just give you a ride every morning, and we can leave together at the end of the night. And then
Yeah.
we all went to dinner with a bunch of people that I'd only known from Twitch streaming, and like it's crazy
Hmm.
awesome. So, and it
Yeah.
as much as I don't relish the idea of doing 9 hours of Lorcana again in one day, like I'm going to do it just because I get to
Oh
run
yeah.
into all those people again. So.
Yeah. Yeah. And that for me has been like really the best thing about Lorcana. Even with the success that I've had at the DLCs at Continentals, it's like my favorite part of all of these events is just getting to see the people.
Mm,
Getting to hang out with my friends, getting, to take photos, talk about the game in person, share the bad beat stories. Like it's just everything about it is so good because of the people.
yeah, no, and it really like it's so, and I never it it reminds me, and that might be one of the reasons I enjoy it so much, is it reminds me of the part of the military that I love the most, in that in the military we have to move around a lot, right? And we don't really get a say in the matter.
Hmm.
They're like, hey, Meyer, you're going to uh, Nellis Air Force Base in over by Las Vegas, and you're leaving in
Yeah.
3 months. And it's never too bad. Like, it sucks to move, but at the same time, I'm I'm going into a place where I'm around a bunch of military guys again, and you just build these relationships, or even you deploy with someone for 6 months, and next thing you know, you're the guy's kid's godparent, and you've only known each
Right.
other for 6 months, but uh,
Right. Yeah.
yeah, so it's one of those better parts of the military that Lorcana reminds me of, which is pretty awesome. But um,
Yeah. That's great.
yeah, we went on a wild tangent, but I love to talk about it because like Lorcana is
Yeah.
awesome. But getting back into it, I've had you on here for almost an hour, so I don't want to take up too much time. But I wanted to pick your brain a little bit more real quick because
Okay.
um, you had mentioned something that was really interesting to me, and said that you will tend to keep wheel in your opening hand against red purple. And
Yeah.
would you only do that if you had the Robin Hood shift line? Or are you keeping it even if you don't have Robin Hood and Naveen?
Um, if it really, really depends on the rest of the hand.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so you need a one drop, you need a two drop, you probably need something to play on turn three. If you have the Robin Hood shift line, like if I have the Robin Hood shift line and I know I'm against red purple, I'm keeping those three cards
Yep.
100% of the time.
Yep.
Um, if I have a whole new world and Naveen, and then the rest of my hand is like a bunch of three drops and songs and no one and two. I'm sending a lot of that back.
Yeah.
because you need the one, you need the two, you need something to do on turn three. This deck's plan A is win the board early and use the hyper efficient removal songs to maintain, to keep the board one.
Mm,
A whole new world is extremely strong in some matchups, but being a 5 cost on Inkable, like you can't keep it if you're missing too many other important pieces.
mm,
But if you like draw a 7 and it's like Cindy, Storm, Smee, Lawrence, Naveen, Wheel, like you're not sending many of those back because you just need to draw a little bit of ink
mm,
and you're gonna crush that game. Um, so it is like, I mean, like everything in Lorcana, it's context dependent.
yeah.
Um,
Yep.
in this deck, I feel like you kind of have to keep a whole new world more than you would in traditional Steel Song because you can't fish for it with
Mm,
Ariel.
yep.
Um, but you can't keep it at the detriment of having a functional hand. So
Yeah. No,
so if you
it's
have if you have a functional hand plus wheel, keep it. If you have a non-functional hand with a wheel in it, send it back. Would be the very high level like
yeah.
generalization.
No, and I love it, and I think that's the important distinction. And you mentioned it is you'll find you're keeping it more in this than a traditional, and because in traditional I'm very rarely ever keeping wheel. But you kind of said it.
Right.
If I have an aerial in hand or double aerial, there's a really good chance that I'll see my wheel that way. So
Yeah.
that's a really good distinction. So I'm glad you said that.
Yeah.
Um, and the
And
last
then
thing, go ahead. No, what do you got?
yeah, I just want to talk about Whole New World a little more.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people um what I see they'll do is they'll like not play they'll just rather than like pay 5 ink for a Whole New World, they'll just do nothing on that turn. And sometimes it's the right thing to do, but I think more often than not it's better to just let it rip.
Mm-hmm.
You pay 5 ink, maybe you draw into a song, you still get to play a card that turn.
Mm-hmm.
You get to interact with their board. But like the chances, if you're sitting there with a Whole New World and you don't have a singer in play, then you're not, like, chances are you're not going to draw a singer next turn, and you're probably not going to draw a singer after that. Like, it's really important to find the spots where you just pay 5 ink for a Whole New World. And I actually played a game Saturday against Purple Steel where I paid 5 for a Whole New World twice and still won that game because I was able to navigate to a spot where I wasn't behind when I had to play the Whole New World. My hand looked like I was going to have to be hard casting a Whole New World, so I played so I wasn't super behind.
Mm-hmm.
I took trades that maybe I wouldn't have taken otherwise. Um, but I played a Whole New World. I was maybe slightly ahead on board or pretty even. Um, so then they have to catch up, and then I have a full grip of 7 to respond to what they do. Um, so that's something that I think anybody like picking up this deck should really look for is is it okay to pay 5 for a Whole New World with this hand? And a lot of times the answer is yes.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think that question came up the other day, and you kind of answered it really well because it does. I think wheel is the card that makes Amber Steel the most difficult. I think that's one reason people have seen so much success with Diggy Diggy Hole is because it removes that factor of a 5 cost
Right.
uninkable. But when we look at casting a dry wheel, we pay 5 for a wheel. People have to remember that look at what our deck is. Like if you paid 5 ink for a wheel, next turn you're going to have 6 ink to play how many three
Mm-hmm.
health characters that quest for two? Lawrence's, 442.
Yeah.
Like it's wild what you can do
Yeah.
with it. So, I mean,
Yeah.
you
Like
could
if
go.
your follow up, sorry, yeah, if your follow up to you paying 5 for a Whole New World is Lawrence Smee Daisy,
Mm,
you're adding 6 lore to the board and you're adding 11 willpower. Like,
mm-hmm.
that's that's a lot of pressure, for your opponent to respond to. We're built in a way that we can catch up on board if we're behind. You know, if you if your follow up to if you don't have any singers in play and your follow up to A Whole New World is like Naveen plus Let the Storm Rage On plus Smee, that's you did three things. You removed one of their things, you added two things of yours, and suddenly maybe you're ahead on board now.
Hmm.
Um, you have really, really good follow-ups to paying 5 to draw 7.
No, and that's just it. Like I've casted Whole New World for 5 plenty of times because I know that generally we can do more with that 5 or 6 ink the next turn than most other decks can. It's wild. So no, so I agree, and I'm
Yeah.
glad you brought that up because it is a question that seems to come up quite a bit. Or they'll talk about how they got stuck with 2 whole new worlds in hand, and then they'll show a picture and they had 6 ink, and it's like, no, no, you didn't. like,
Yeah.
it's like, look what you could have done.
Yeah.
But no, so I'm
Yeah,
glad you
you
brought
you
that
could
up.
like yeah. Do you want to hear about my Continentals run?
Yeah, yep, that's what I was gonna ask, and then I thought we could end on Blurple. That was the one match that was streamed. You mentioned you'd rewatched
Yep.
it, so kind of your thoughts on that. But yeah, so what do we got?
Yeah, I can go I'll go into a little more detail on that match, but
Mm-hmm.
I ended up playing R&B round 1. Um
Mm-hmm.
I won the die roll against him and I said I'll go first game 2, which
Mm-hmm.
is something I never do. Like I said that out loud and then my next thought was like, why did I say that? I don't want that. But he beat me game 1. He did blurple things. He ramped into Genie into Elsa, which is somewhat difficult to overcome. And then um, game 2, I was on the play. I had a pretty strong open. He had Big Elsa on his turn 5, on 6 ink,
Mm-hmm.
which he used to like tap down. One of the common play patterns with Big Elsa is you like tap down a thing and then you deal with the other thing because the thing you tap down is going to stay
Mm-hmm.
tapped down
Yep.
for a turn cycle. But I followed his Elsa play up with a spend to ready a piglet that he had exerted, so he couldn't touch the piglet next turn, and that was enough to seal that game. And then round 2, I know we talked about this a little earlier. I got O2'd by Red Blue. Um, I played my on the play game pretty poorly, and I was feeling pretty bad about that. But then the next round I played against Red Purple, got a 2-0, was feeling good after that. Um, I was able to both games. I had a pretty strong open into like a fast whole new world. Drew into another whole new world. Was just able to chain them. Keep the pressure. Play Pete into his B prep turns um, and just close the game out. So it's feeling good after that. Round 4, I played against um, John Ball, who's Warp 3000 on
Mm-hmm.
20 lore,
Yep.
and we played probably like the tightest game 1. He was on the play game 1, um, and it felt like in that game, like literally every single decision mattered,
Mm-hmm.
because I was threatening lethal. I was threatening the win, on my next turn, and on his turn, he was able to get to exactly 20. Um, and if if he had made even a minor misstep, like he would have lost that game.
Mm-hmm.
And if I had made a minor misstep, I would have lost that game even like a way worse than I did.
Yeah.
Um, and then game 2, this is kind of there's kind of a pattern with this. Like I think the Cinderella decks are like the best on the play decks in the game.
Mm-hmm.
So game 2 was a lot more one-sided. Um, I had I made a play that made myself feel very smart. Um, where on his turn 4, he played a goat, and then on my turn 5, I shifted my one big Cinderella, and I didn't quest with it. Um, so, because goat plus crab is enough to clear Cinderella.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and then the following turn, I used Sven to ready her after questing, and then I did the same thing the turn after that. So she ended up getting nine lore points instead of
Mm-hmm.
just 3 and trading with a goat,
Mm-hmm.
because I played around his crab. Um, so after that, I played against Purple Steel aggro that had Fire the Cannons and Docks and Maleficence, um, and decks that have Maleficence in them, like the one cost Maleficent, is traditionally a pretty favorable matchup for anything
Mm-hmm.
with Cinderella and Let the Storm Rage on. Um, so I 2-0'd him. I played against Green Steel the next turn or the next game. Um, I had one game he played Ursula on 3, the 3 cost Ursula on 3, and
Mm-hmm.
then I had back-to-back Pete's to prevent her from
Nice.
doing anything
Nice.
until I could draw Raging Fire to clear her, so she wasn't effective. And then round 7, I played against my second Blurple deck of the day, um, which in seven rounds I played against 6 different decks, which I think probably pretty unique for a tournament,
Mm-hmm.
for a tournament with 33% red blue. Which, I mean, let me tell you how happy I was to only have played red blue
Yeah.
once. Uh, so yeah, so this was my feature match, and um, game 1, another nail biter with a purple deck.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he he got a genie out on his turn 3 that was able to just quest away for a lot, make some free challenges into things. um and this game I kind of think about a bunch because um at the end of the game, like, he had a manor, and he was at 13, and he was threatening, and he had 7. He had enough to like win the game on his next turn.
Yep.
I drew a whole new world on my last turn. I sung it. I was looking for a couple songs to clear his board. I have only found 2 Let the Storm Rage on, and all of his stuff was he had a genie with 3 damage,
Yep.
and then a bunch of 3 or more willpower characters. So I could clear the genie, put him down to only having 5 lore. He could go to 18. He plays double goat, he wins the game.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking, if I had drawn a Strength of a Raging Fire instead of that second Let the Storm Rage on, I could have cleared one more thing. He
Mm-hmm.
was only at eight ink, so double goat doesn't do it, and he can't ink to enough to goat bounce goat. Um, so if I had drawn that, I possibly win that game. I didn't see all of the cards in hand, but if he had a big Elsa, I think he could have disrupted my board enough to make it so I couldn't win, and then I'd have to answer his board again. So just a really tight game. Um, there was one turn. There's one turn where I quested with Daisy, where I think maybe looking back, in hindsight, I shouldn't have quested with Daisy. I should have just taken a line where I quest with Smee, and then play Sven to ready the Smee, um, and then start questing with like the Daisy the next turn
Yep.
when I have more board. But uh, it's in the moment. It's a toss up. It's really hard to say how the game is going to play out. So, and then game 2, I think took about 4 minutes. I zapped his
Mm-hmm.
first thing, I zapped his second thing. He opened Tipo Genie Elsa again, but I had Let the Storm Rage on for Tipo. I had Strength of a Raging Fire for Genie. He played Elsa on his turn 4. I played John Silver on Elsa. He played Belle on his turn 5 just to clear Cinderella, and then I played John Silver again. And by the end of my 5th turn, I was at 19 with 4 characters in play. So um, that was that.
Mm-hmm.
And then uh, did a brief interview with Rebecca afterwards, which was very cool.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, okay, final standings go up. Like, did you make it? And I didn't think I would be in because I was at 30. I was just at 30 points, and that was either going to be like the bubble or just below it. And
Mm-hmm.
my tiebreakers weren't good, so I check it. I'm in 21st. I'm like, yeah, that's what I expected, but that was enough to win the Elsa's Ice Palace. So very happy with how the day went.
Nice, man. And you know, I haven't even looked it up. What's that Elsa's Ice Palace going for?
The vendors were buying it on site for $2,000.
Oh
Um,
my
I
goodness.
Yeah, I don't. So I played Magic for a long time,
Mm-hmm.
and like there was never like anything in Magic when I was playing that was like, oh, here's a multiple thousands of dollar prize card
Yeah.
for you, unless it was specifically like this is a Black Lotus tournament and only the winner gets the Black Lotus.
Mm-hmm.
This is a 128 person tournament and they gave out 32 Elsa's Ice Palace,
Yeah.
you know. Um, so I know the ones from Europe had sold for between like 3,500 and like 5,000, um, which is just mind
Yeah.
blowing. Obviously I'd like to get a number a little closer to that, but
Mm-hmm.
um, that's gotta find somebody who's
Yeah.
who's willing to pay. So,
Man, oh man, what a
yeah,
prize! Man, it sure beats the
yeah.
air fryers Yu-Gi-Oh's giving out, huh?
Uh, I mean, if you don't have an air fryer, that is an air fryer is a hell of a prize.
Oh yeah, man.
But
Everybody here,
yeah.
that's if there's anything to learn from this video, because it sounds like Boomy is also a fan of the air fryer. You need an
Oh
air
yeah.
fryer. But
You need an air fryer. You don't want an air fryer. You don't, well, you want an air fryer, but it's
mhm.
not it's not you just want an air fryer. You need an air fryer.
Mhm. Oh yeah.
It's just
No.
the best kitchen appliance there is
Yeah.
in 2025.
100%. Life's I was
So,
having a conversation with someone
yeah.
the other day, and they were talking about cooking some dish, and I was like, it doesn't sound like that I can put that in an air fryer. And they're like, no, you can't. And I was like, I don't care.
Yeah.
Like
No thanks. Yeah, I'm
so
good.
well, sweet man. I it's awesome. You know what an awesome end to be able to pull it's to make it to get the Ice Palace. You got the lots of great
Yeah.
prizes. 21st, and then went to Disneyland for the first time. Um,
Yeah.
like
No, it's been a fantastic year, in Lorcana for me. I finished top 32 in Chicago. Um, so that was a smaller one, so the prizes like scaled like up a tier.
mhm,
So you had to get top 16 to get the Rapunzel, but I was able to sell the Cinderella and Let It Go, which more than funded my trip to Las Vegas.
mhm,
And in Las Vegas, I finished top 32. That time I got the Rapunzel, the Cinderella, the Let It Go. That funded a lot of my trip to Seattle. In Seattle, I finished top 64. Got another Rapunzel and Let It Go. That funded a lot of my trip to Disneyland. And um, you know, I didn't have to pay much for the DLC in Chicago. The venue was 18 minutes from my house. I put a few people up there.
mhm.
We had a great time. We just get up in the morning, drive over to the venue, play games, come back to my house. I got to sleep in my bed every day, and it
Yeah,
was it was just great.
nice man. That's awesome to hear. Um, I guess one way I like to kind of in these is if someone wanted to pick up, you know, Amber Steel No Mermaid as you've tied, or I think something songs No Mermaid. I can't see the
Yeah,
word.
aggro. I put it in the Dreamborn as AgroSong's No
There we
Mermaid.
go. No Mermaid. What would be your advice to them?
Um, my my advice would be mulligan mulligan and play the early game for curve. Um, Most games you're going to want to play Smee on turn two and Piglet on turn three. Um, I know it's really appealing to just get that Piglet out and start questing with him, but most of the time he's just going to get eaten by anything really, a Calhoun, an opposing Smee, a Snake. But if you play Smee on two and Piglet on three, the Smee's probably going to go for at least four. the piglet's going to get 3, and then you can play Sven on turn 4 to ready the piglet, and maybe he goes for 6. So it's just things like that. Like, um, pay attention to your captains. We talked a lot about the captains earlier, but it's more important now than ever. That SME has a captain to sail under. Um, you know, don't you don't always have to throw you don't always have to throw a whole new world out there. At every given opportunity. Sometimes you might end the game with a whole new world in your hand because it's just better not to play it. It might be better to set up a Rapunzel line and get your card advantage that way, and
Mm,
you won't have an opportunity to play a whole new world. Sometimes just let that whole new world rip. Just draw 7 new ones. If you need to dig, if you can set up a if you can hope to dig for like a really nice follow up turn, just pay 5, let it rip. Um, the shift isn't super important. What's really important a lot of times is playing to that curve, or having 3 or 4 characters in play by the end of your third turn. Um, use Sven effectively. Um, Sven Sven is very good for high tempo plays. So a common play pattern with Sven is like play Lawrence on 3, quest for 2, play Sven, ready Lawrence, sing Strength of a Raging Fire.
mm,
Um, that way you get your lore points and you get to sing. Um, and then I guess the biggest thing that I would say is recognize when your opponents are not going to fall for Rapunzel traps. Too many times, and I've done this myself, and it takes I think it takes a lot of practice to learn, is that if your opponent has kind of sniffed out that you have a Rapunzel in your hand, just put her in the inkwell. You're gonna play so badly trying to set up a Rapunzel trap, and it's just gonna get worse and worse every turn you don't draw 3 with her, and you're going to ink a card. Maybe you're going to ink a Sven over a Rapunzel, and the Rapunzel's going to do nothing. Where the Sven could have been a very high tempo play, or could have been a card that doesn't get banished to Sisu. Um, so ink your Rapunzels more than you might want to,
mm.
because the good players are not going to let you draw cards with her.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, you're gonna have to use your own songs to damage your characters to get the Rapunzel value. And at Continentals, I think of all the cards I drew from Rapunzel, two of them were two of them were from damage that didn't come from my own songs.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
No. It's that I think that in itself is a really good piece of advice. A video I posted earlier today, the game that I lost was because I was trying so hard to set up a Rapunzel heal instead of just playing the Rapunzel and having a 1-5-2 on board. Um, and
right,
and I talk about it in the video of like I lost like 6 lore because I didn't just play out the Rapunzel when he was never gonna give me the Rapunzel heal to begin with. So
right, yeah, and that's something. If you can recognize that that's how the game around Rapunzel is going to play out early, and you either anchor or just play her out,
mm,
that's the best case scenario. The worst case scenario is she just rots in your hand. You set up your Lawrence bait. You put out your guy there, and then, oh, okay, they traded with their fox, or they traded with their snake. My Lawrence is gonna get to draw cards, and then they just bounce the snake with
mm,
a fox, and now you didn't play to the board, or you inked the wrong card, and now this Rapunzel is gonna do nothing. Like, you didn't quest with your Lawrence because you're trying to set up this trap. And it's things like that where you might not recognize that is actually costing you percentage points in the game.
mm.
Is really is trying to force the Rapunzel value.
Yep. Nope. I
So
I couldn't agree more. I think it's plays like that, not questing on turn 2 on the play with Cindy and then you lose at 19. Like it's
Yeah.
those small things that people, they're not making misplays, they're just not making the correct plays. It's not what they did was wrong, but that's why you lost at
Yeah.
19-4. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Where it's like, it is a kind of those toss up plays, and it's tough. It's tough to play optimally, especially
mm,
when you know what the optimal line was with the benefit of hindsight.
yeah. Yep.
If I just quested with that Cindy, I would have had one extra lore, but also, a whole game can change if you quest with that Cindy.
Mhm.
Maybe they adjust their line because they're going to prioritize getting rid of your Cindy because they suspect you play a big Cindy. So it's tough. It's tough, but you gotta try to find the good lines and get the most value out of your cards.
Yeah, no, and that's just it, right? Chris Oyola talked about a lot, thinking 3 turns ahead, and and
Hmm.
I would tell people that I think I'm doing good enough to look. I'm past looking 1 turn ahead. I'm sitting at like kind of that like 2.5 turns, and I haven't figured out how to get that last half where I'm looking correctly 3 turns ahead. But
Right.
that's what it is, setting up the lines. So, but
Yeah.
well,
Yeah. And
go ahead.
yeah, go ahead.
No.
Oh no, I was just gonna add to that a little bit where I think the most important thing when you're looking, when you're thinking about thinking, 3 turns ahead is really when you when you open your hand and by the time you've learned what your opponent is playing, like you really need to have an idea about what your turns 4 and 5 are going to look like,
Mm-hmm.
because those are typically the most pivotal. Um, because those are turns you can be playing a whole new world. Those are turns when you can be playing multiple characters a turn. Um, my list didn't have Kita, but turn 5 is the Kita turn. She's after if moving forward, she's going back in. Like she's just too good against all of the random challenger guys decks that are out there. So
Mm-hmm.
she's going back in. The 32% red blue scared me off of her for the weekend, and I wish I just stuck with her because she's very, very good into Blurple. She's very, very good into Green Purple, which are 3 of my game losses.
Mm-hmm.
You know, um, so not saying that having her would have made the difference between day two and not, but um, you know, I'm going off on a tangent here. Think about what your game is going to look like by turn 4 or 5, and make sure that you can either be ahead on board or have a plan to catch up and turn the corner.
Yeah. No, and it, that's the same kind of stuff that Oyola would said. I think we talked about that in his first interview of, and something I talk about with JD. Getting to talk to all you guys, Sean and Oyola and JD and you. It's like there's a specific reason that you guys consistently are making day two at big events and doing these things, and it's because you all are saying the same thing that the rest of us aren't saying, because you guys know that that's what it takes. Like when I'm doing my mulligan, I'm not looking at turns 1 2. I'm looking at turns 4 and 5. Like 1 and 2 will take care of
Right.
themselves. And
Yeah.
so, just again, really phenomenal advice, man. So, um, with that though, I've had you on here for 90 minutes. I
All
know
right.
that you said your kid was asleep and your wife's watching her movie, but I don't want to steal all your time away. But anything that's popped up, for advice that you haven't said yet, any shout outs, your encore, what would you give?
Shout outs to my testing group. That includes JD. That includes my buddy TJ Coffin is his Discord name. My very good friend Attack for Two. Just everybody, everybody on the testing group, and then all of the people who uh, really steered me back to Amber Steel. I know you and I talked a lot about list options and and choices and lines, going into Continentals and um, a lot of people correctly told me, don't play red purple, play what you know,
Mm,
play your wheel pile or play a dock pile, but you have to play amber and steel cards.
mm. Well, sweet, man. That's
So,
awesome. It's, Coffin is also a part of the flower farm. I'm just saying, so
yeah.
pretty good group of guys over here.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. For
Oh,
sure.
awesome. You know what you could have done? You could have played his Baja Blast. So
Uh, yeah, it's funny you say that because I packed playable cards in 4 colors, and those were the two that stayed at home.
yeah,
I don't know if I brought a single blue or green
yeah,
card to
yeah,
Anaheim with me.
yeah. No,
But
I think I'd even mentioned that, and that's when you told me like, yeah, no, those are the two colors I didn't bring. So,
right.
um,
Okay, yeah, yeah. We did have that conversation. That's right. Yeah.
yeah. It's a goofy deck, that's for sure. There's something magical
Yeah.
about playing it, but yeah, not my cup of tea, so to speak. But well, sweet
Yeah.
man. Well, I appreciate you being on here. I wanted to talk.
Yeah,
I
thank you for
remember
having me.
for the longest time I was just scared to ask for you to come on, and then it just became a matter of when can our busy lives kind of sync up. So um,
Yeah.
well,
Yeah, no.
sweet.
I think like myself, anybody in the community who you'd want to interview, likely would be happy to. So, say anybody you want to interview, just go ahead and reach out. Tell
Mm,
them, tell them Boomy says they have
yeah.
to.
Yep, that's that. I was just gonna say it. I was like, Boomy sent me here. He said you can't say no. So,
Yeah.
well, sweet man.
All
Well,
right.
I
Well,
appreciate your time.
yeah, thanks for having me.
Oh yeah.
Enjoyed this.
Oh yeah. All right. Well, for everybody watching, remember always stay happy and healthy. Until next time.